Alright, welcome back. Today, we're at the track, starting a new training block today. First off, I want to say, appreciate you guys who have been watching the videos, those who are subscribed. We've grown, I would say, a decent amount over the last month, probably given the fact that I've put out more videos over the last few weeks than I have previously. So those who are new here, I appreciate you guys subscribing. We're right over about 3,000 subscribers, which is pretty cool. I'm getting a ton of comments about two things. One, people love the videos and they like the content, they like the way that I train, and they like to get some insight. But two, people hate my microphone setup, and I understand. I'm using one of those mics that just connects to the camera and is just pointed at me, so it picks up a lot of residual noise. I don't know if you guys can hear right now, but they're in this track. There's a giant fanning system above that's constantly on. So if you guys hear this little buzzing in the background, it's from that. A new mic is something that I'll get eventually. I always have this kind of like goal setting type business mind when it comes to things like this, and I don't just go out and buy things. So in my head, I have told myself I'm not investing anymore in terms of equipment into this channel until I hit 5,000 subscribers. I realize that could be a long time away from right now. And if the audio is something that's going to be a huge issue for so many people, then I'll change that goal. So what I'll do is we'll make it where any video in April, so today's April 2nd, so previous videos don't count on this. If any video in April gets a total of 100 likes on any of those videos, I will go out and buy a microphone that I can hold or clip on. I'm not going to train with the mic on because I think that's stupid and it's uncomfortable, but I'll get some sort of system that'll sound better than what I have right now. So while we're on it, make sure to like the video, make sure to subscribe if you're not, and then we're going to get into today's training. Alright, I'm done with the warm-up now. Easy warm-up, not too much different than previous video where I did my whole warm-up. So I think it's 3 videos ago, if you want to see the exact warm-up that I go through, it's going to be on that video. But today, being day 1 of a new training block, we are going to change up the focus a little bit for the next 4 weeks. I've done a lot of intensive work over the past few months, so I'm going to be working on building up a little bit more specific capacity, meaning this day that I normally do heavy accelerations and focus on a lot of short sprints, I'm going to change that up and turn it into more of a capacity type workout. I get a lot of questions about what do I do for conditioning, do I do any zone 2 work? My answer is always, I don't do traditional conditioning in the sense of I sit on a bike or a rower or go for a jog for 30, 45 minutes at a really low intensity. I just think it's boring, and I like to enjoy my training. So today is an example on how I do get some additional conditioning in, but make it a little bit more specific towards my goals in terms of what I train for. So I like to be fast, I like to be strong, I like to be explosive. So when I'm going to do my conditioning, which would be a day like today, I'm going to focus more specifically on what I like to do, but change it up by going slightly less intense with shorter rest periods. So we're looking at today's session, for example, is going to be sled sprints at 90% effort. We're going to do a lot of repetitions, and we're going to keep the rest periods short, like 30 to 45 seconds in between those reps. So not all-out sprints where they're going to start deteriorating over the course of the 10 repetitions that I plan to start off with here, but you go a little bit lighter on that intensity, that shorter rest period, and then you try to mimic that intensity on every single rep. You don't want to go as hard as you possibly can, rest 30 seconds, the next rep's a little bit harder because you're still tired, and then more and more and more, and then the last 4 or 5 reps on that starts to deteriorate and just really becomes junk volume. So you want to hit about 90% effort, rest 30 to 45 seconds, 90% effort again, and try to maintain that. So in my mind, I feel like I could do that for the 10 repetitions that I have. So I'm going to do 10 sled sprints with 50% body weight on the sled. So for me, that's going to be 50 kilos, even though I'm about 98 kilos right now. I'm going to do a sled sprint for 10 meters, rest 30 seconds, sled sprint for 10 meters, rest 30 seconds, and we're going to do 10 total repetitions on that. After that 10th repetition, we're going to take a 2-minute break. We're going to lighten the load on the sled to 30% body weight, so 30 kilos for me, and then we're going to do a few 20s on that same thing. We're not going to do so much volume on the 20s. I'm thinking the 20s will be somewhere between 3 to 5 repetitions just to get a little bit longer work in there. I'm thinking in my head, I want my total volume to be close to about 200 total meters when I look at this. So when you're doing work capacity, it's really important to measure the amount of total volume you do within a session. So I'm thinking week 1, I'm going to be about 200 meters total volume. Next week, somewhere between 220 to 240. Week number 3, 250. And then week number 4 will be a deload week. Probably get back down towards that 200 number. And that's kind of the idea that I have in my head. But just because that's the idea I have right now doesn't mean that that's going to be what actually happens. So I'm going to load the sled up. I've already done my warm-up, and we're going to knock out the first 10 reps on that sled. All right, 10 reps, 10 meters. 50 kilos was kind of tough, but I felt like I was able to keep the same intensity on each of those. So the goal of like progressing this is going to be progression in volume, because capacity is what we're trying to build. So not gonna go heavier on those 10 meters when we do this next week. It's just gonna be looking at accumulating more overall volume. The way that 50 felt for those 10s, I'm gonna do hopefully 5 reps of 20, and I'm gonna do half the load from the 50. So I'll do 25 kilos on the sled for the 20s, and then I'll just stick with that over the course of the next 3 weeks. So we'll always do 50 kilos on the 10 meters. We're always gonna do 25 kilos on the 20s, and then possibly in week 4, when we do some sort of a deload, if we want to keep that volume up but truly get some sort of a deload, maybe we'll do 30 to 40 kilos on that 10, and then do some 20s with no sled. Do a little bit of contrast from a resisted to unresisted before we get into the next block. So I said I was gonna rest about 2 minutes. It's probably gonna end up being about 3, 4 total. 10 sets of 10 felt good. We got 100 meters done already, so I wanted 200 today. So that means we gotta do 5 20s. The difference between conditioning and doing work capacity is just the focus on what each of those sessions are gonna do. They're both going to hopefully build your ability to handle volume and recover more quickly. Conditioning in itself is more of like building that aerobic base, trying to do like zone 2 work, very easy light aerobic work. The more you get into specificity, the more that just general conditioning turns into work capacity. So you could do work capacity in the gym. Let's say you're a weightlifter. Your work capacity might look like doing EMOMs on snatches rather than just doing like 4 sets of 2 to 3. Maybe you're doing EMOMs for 8 to 10 minutes of 2 to 3 reps at a very light working weight. Less rest, more repetitions should build up your capacity to do better quality of that same thing later on in your training phases. So that's the main difference between doing like general conditioning and work capacity. Work capacity is going to closely look like what it is you're trying to do, just at lighter loads, less rest periods, get the heart rate up, more conditioning like effect as you do that. At least that's how I view capacity versus conditioning in my head. So we're gonna put 25 kilos on the sled. We're actually gonna take 25 kilos off the sled, and then we're gonna get into our 20s. That's the session. 200 meters total. I said about 90% effort. I don't know if it was necessarily 90%. It's hard to gauge a percent effort when we're looking at doing sprints or anything like that. So I would just say, if you're going to do something like this, make it a tough, repeatable effort on each of those repetitions, knowing that you're going to have 30-second rest. Now, I didn't have a stopwatch or anything to time that. I just kind of spun the sled around, stood at the line, waited what I felt was going to be about 15 seconds or so, and then just kind of took off after that. Once you get into set like 6 and 7 on those 10s, you start getting a pretty gnarly pump in the quads and the glutes. And then on the 20s from set number 1, immediately you feel that pump again in the quads and the glutes, which is what I was kind of expecting to happen today, which is good. So that's it for today. Make sure, if you haven't already, like the video. 100 likes on any video in April, and I will upgrade the audio system so y'all can stop complaining about it. And then make sure to subscribe if you haven't. Other than that, we'll see you in the next video.